Okay, so I'll just do a quick introduction and then we'll get going.
Okay.
Welcome everyone to our next speaker series. Today I am very happy to have Sherman Hamilton here with us today. Sherman is a former Canadian uh, national basketball player, obviously for Canada Basketball, former Olympian as well. And as we get to hear every March, a VCU alumni as well. And Sherman also works for NBA TV Canada. Is that correct, Sherman?
Yeah, Sportsnet and TSN as well. Yes.
And TSN, perfect. Well, thank you, Sherman. We appreciate you being on the speaker series, and we're really happy to have you. Maybe for those that don't know you as much, or those who are watching who are maybe more part of the soccer world, maybe you could give us just a quick background of who you are and how you came to be in the position you're in now.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be on with you. And yeah, for me personally, my journey has been through basketball, although soccer has been previously my favorite sport, but basketball took it over. And for me, it was simple. I started playing basketball when I was about 10 years old. And the game came to me fairly easily, and I just fell in love with the game. And I loved every sport. I mean, you name it: baseball, hockey, soccer, badminton, table tennis, whatever it was, I would play it. And then I got hooked on basketball, and all my friends played basketball. So we became a very close knit group, and we tried to play basketball every opportunity we could. And, you just continue to grow and develop, and then you realize you have some talent, and people are looking at you and talking to you a bit differently. And I ended up through high school being an MVP player and a top 5 player in the city of Toronto, and ended up going on scholarship to Florida Tech first, a Division II school. Then I transferred from there after 1 year. After getting Freshman of the Year, I went to Virginia Commonwealth University, VCU, and I played there for 3 seasons. Played in March Madness, which was a great and amazing experience. And from that, during that time, I played for the national team, as you mentioned, won Olympics, 2 World Championships, Pan Am Games, multiple qualification tournaments. I have over 100 games played for the country, and played a little bit professionally as well overseas, which was a great experience as well. And all of that built and translated into me, kind of shifting gears after being injured, playing professionally, to find something, as a career to do after basketball. And it ended up being broadcasting. So I've never really entered the real world. I'm in the toy department of life, playing basketball now, talking about basketball. So I've lived a very, very blessed life.
Yeah, I agree with that. And people ask me what it's like to, work in soccer, and it doesn't always feel like a job, right? We're lucky to be working in sport and within the sport that we love. So, congratulations on an amazing career. I can only imagine what it's like to play in a March Madness and be a part of that environment. Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Something my son is hoping to do in a few years' time.
He can do it. He can do
it. I hope he ends up being a little bit taller than me, though. But yeah, so today I wanted to bring you on and have a discussion about diversity and inclusion and what that means. And it means something, I believe it means something a little bit different for everybody. And experiences within that has been different as well. And what we try to highlight within the speaker series is, what those experiences are like, how good or bad, how you get through them. Maybe you had a mentor, a coach, a family member that helped get through that, if there were any difficult times, and really helping our athletes of today learn about that and how to manage or how to deal with any difficulties they may be having in that area. So maybe we can talk about, you mentioned when you were young playing lots of different sports. Was there any time, when you were younger, where you may have felt like you were excluded or treated differently because you were a young Black man or a person of color?
Well, yeah, absolutely. As a kid, the only thing you understand is that you just want to play and have fun. You want to be involved, you want to be a part of something. And especially if you're the type of personality that loves to compete all the time, you got to compete against somebody or multiple people. And those people might not look like you, but at that age it didn't matter. You just wanted to play and be with your friends and play with their friends and just continue to have fun and grow as athletes. And there were a few occasions where I was reminded at a young age that I was a Black kid and certain things were not available for me. And it was clear as day. I fell in love with hockey very young, born in Canada. you know Here's this Jamaican family who just came up from Jamaica, and we're sitting every Saturday night on my parents' bed watching Hockey Night in Canada, watching the Leafs play, because that's what you do in Canada back then, right? We all watched Hockey Night in Canada.
Mhm.
And I fell in love with hockey, and I just enjoyed everything about it. And I would go out and I'd play shinny. I didn't have any of the equipment that the other kids had, and that was a real eye opener to see kids come with actual hockey gloves, an actual helmet, skates that didn't have rust on it, hockey sticks that weren't patched together with nails and stuff like that. It was different right away, and you could see that. And it was interesting because I knew for a fact that my parents were not going to be able to afford to send me to these hockey camps and to get me the gear that was up to date and just pay the ice fees and all that stuff. So, I realized really early that hockey wasn't a sport that was designed for someone that looked like me to have success. And that was an eye opener, because you really, really are oblivious to those things until it's thrown in your face. And when
Mhm.
it's thrown in your face as a kid, you don't know how to navigate it. It doesn't really make sense to you. So you just kind of move on and find something else to do. But that to me was my first experience of realizing that, all things aren't equal. Everything wasn't designed for everybody to have a chance. And it had nothing to do with my skill level, because I could compete with those kids that were on the ice. I didn't have the financial ability and I didn't have the resources to be able to be on the ice consistently like them. So, that was a very, very early, I'd say, lesson that I learned in terms of understanding that it's not going to be fair all the time. You're going to have to figure out a way to navigate that and do the best you can.
Yeah, and I think it's great that you said that you realized that. Um, did you, at any point, did you have conversations with your parents to help you come to that realization, or help you with that sort of or that barrier that was there?
Yeah, honestly, I didn't. My parents worked very hard, an immigrant family, and they come here with nothing, as a lot of immigrant families do, and they build a life. They become homeowners. They work multiple jobs. They save every penny, and they do amazing things to actually put their kids into situations that they have a chance to do things that they weren't able to do. But that would have been a little bit out of their reach, a
Yeah,
lot out of their reach, to be honest with you. So
yeah,
it wasn't a question of having those conversations with them. My parents always taught me, just go out there and work hard, do the best you can, continue to strive. And they never really told me about the other side of it because they experienced it, but they didn't want that to be something that was planted in my head as something that would be a deterrent in terms of working hard and trying to achieve things. So I never really spoke to them about it. And I was the type of kid that internalized things and kind of processed it on my own and then found a way to overcome it. And, my way of overcoming it was I fell into another sport called basketball. And there was nothing that was going to stop me from trying to be the best I could be in basketball. And to me, those discussions that I never had with my parents, and maybe they weren't equipped to have those discussions,
hmm
but I was able to navigate the whole situation based on the friends I had, based on some mentors in my life, and understanding that my competitive nature, I might not talk about it, but when I'm on the playing field, I'm going to compete as hard as anybody. And that kind of was my safe zone to be able to express myself. And I found very early with basketball, especially, and some with soccer, because I did have some success with soccer, was that in those moments when I was good and I was better than anybody else, my color didn't matter. There was nothing, my size, my color, nothing mattered. other than my skill on the particular playing field. And that was an eye opener as well. Certain people talk to you a bit differently when you help them win, or they see talent that they can nurture or they can develop. So that to me was something that really opened my eyes to say, okay, the better I get at this is the more opportunities I'm going to get from people who probably wouldn't have given me the opportunity. So I
Mhm.
had to really, really hone in on that.
Yeah, when you're speaking now, when you talk about, if you win or you're successful, whether that be for your team or whatever that may be, um, they don't necessarily, they think of you differently, right? Or they
Absolutely.
treat you differently. And that's a perfect example, with the Euros going on right now with Raheem Sterling. So Raheem is Jamaican
Yeah.
background. His parents immigrated to the
England, right?
UK.
Yeah.
And for years and years and years, the papers and the tabloids were always on him about, you're not a good role model, or, you're this, that, or otherwise, until he scored the winning goal on, day it was now, but Sunday
Yeah.
morning, the Monday papers, he's the greatest thing, and it's the exact same paper,
Yeah.
right? Nothing's changed about this guy, but now he's, a national treasure because he
Yeah.
scored the winning goal, right?
And there's a reverse to that too. In the Olympics, I believe it was '88 when Ben Johnson won the gold, and that next day he was Canadian sprinter Ben Johnson.
Hmm.
And then when they found out about the doping situation, he became Jamaican-born Canadian sprinter Ben Johnson.
Yeah,
So they're very, very particular about when they want to accept you with open arms and when they want to keep you at arm's length to make sure that there's separation between you and them.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Very true. Obviously, very unfortunate. Um, I'm not sure how we, or those who aren't in the media, can manage that narrative, but it's definitely obvious that it happens, um, and obviously it's something that will obviously affects the athlete, um, but it affects their family as well, and how they're treated in public, and it's definitely something that has to change.
Yeah, you're right. And when we talk about the impact of language and in terms of how strong it can be in a very subtle way, when you talk about people of color and say those things, I think the messaging goes beyond just that person and their family. It goes to the young people who are aspiring to do things that that person has done, and it can be a real deterrent. If you don't have a strong system around you and people that are going to really help you navigate those type of comments, those type of headlines, things of that nature, of people that you look up to in your sport, it's difficult, to figure out why. Our brains are designed to figure out things.
Yeah,
And when we ask ourselves why and we don't get that answer, we can get very frustrated because our brains are trying to grind it out and it can't get an answer. And that type of, I think, constant agony that your brain is put in can really run you off the track and lead you down some paths that you don't want to go down. So the impact is so multi-leveled. The problem is it goes down to our kids, and
mm,
those kids that are getting, I think, distracted from what they need to do sometimes because of that type of language is a very, very real issue.
yeah, yeah. I agree. I agree. Um, Maybe moving on a little bit, and you mentioned, going to university. Did you notice any differences of, how, you're treated in your local community, playing basketball in Toronto, to moving down south, whether it be in Florida or in Virginia? And can you explain, if there was any differences, and how you managed that, or how you noticed it, and that sort of thing?
Yeah, there's a lot of differences. The first thing I noticed was that, in Toronto, I was a good player. I stood out in the group. When you get to the States, there's a lot of players, a lot of people that can do what you can do. So now it's not a talent disparity, it becomes a work ethic issue. How hard are you willing to work with the talent that you have? That's the only thing that separates you, because there are a lot of athletes, as you know, in the States. There are a lot of guys that are our size that can do a lot of things that we could do. There are bigger guys that can do what we can do. But how hard are you willing to work? And what kind of mentality do you have when you're isolated and you're alone and you've got to navigate a way to be successful? Because, when I went to the States, I didn't go with anybody. I went to the States by myself and had to figure out a whole different country. I had to figure out, the next level of education, which is university. And I also had to figure out how to compete at a higher level of basketball. Those are a lot of things being thrown at a young person, especially from Canada. And culturally, although we're close to the States, we have different cultures. You know what I mean? And the other thing I didn't realize when I got there was that there was some animosity at the fact that I was a Canadian taking an American scholarship away, because these guys were looking at it like, I got a friend who could be here just like he could. Why are we taking this Canadian kid?
Yeah.
So that was a level that I didn't really expect when I headed over there. Oh, but I got a good dose of it. And you realize very quickly that it's a cutthroat situation.
Mhm.
Every day you're fighting for your spot. And good thing for me is I love that battle. I look forward to it. And I was engaged every day in that battle. But it can be overwhelming if you're not ready for it, because the barrage of negativity that you can get when you're on scholarship and the pressure that you can face if you're not producing, it can really tear you down. And I've seen it. I've seen, the universities that I've gone to not want a kid anymore and make life miserable for that kid to
Mhm.
try and get that scholarship back. So it's a very, very, well, it was then a very arduous situation. And I would imagine that even now, with more of a platform and more spotlight for athletes, that it's just as difficult when they come over from Canada. And if they don't perform or they underperform, they can catch a lot of flack for that.
Yeah, I think especially with social media being what it is, and you can reach out to almost anybody,
Yeah.
and whether it's a positive or a negative comment, chances are they'll see it, right? And that must be another added layer to that pressure or dealing with the negativity. You mentioned when you were younger that you internally, processed and um, managed the situation you were in. Did you do the same thing, while you were in college, or did you have coaches or teammates? How did you? Was it the same process? Dealing with that stress.
A little bit. I was blessed to have a father for 18 years of my life who showed me, the idea of being thoughtful, being pensive, approaching things from a very introspective way. And that really helped me, because when we face situations that might not go our way, sometimes the first thing is to express it. And sometimes that's not the best thing to do. You need to kind of take that moment. They say count to 10 before you say something when you're angry. Just take that moment and just figure out for yourself where you are. And my dad set that example for me at a very young age. So I did take a lot of that with me into university, and make sure that, understanding that I felt like I was a kamikaze pilot. I was on my own, and nobody really had my back until they trusted, number one, I could produce, and number two, that we could have a relationship. So I had to build those situations with teammates. And, once you develop those relationships with teammates and coaches, then you can express some more things, and you can talk, about things that might be on your mind, that might be heavy, things that you want some help navigating. But for the most part, I've always been that introspective person that would, try to figure as much out on my own as I can before I open my mouth. It hasn't always worked, but I've had more success than failure.
Mhm.
And that's kind of my approach when I got to school. I didn't know anybody. I had to build relationships. I had to make sure that I trusted people and knew that people had my back before I could share those intimate thoughts that I was having.
Yeah. Um, and then, moving to Europe, and I believe most of the places you played was more of an Eastern European, or part of that area of the world.
Yep.
And how was that being, again, another country, another culture? Um, how did you manage that? You know, um, I'm assuming moving there on your own again, and at that point in time, being a black man in an Eastern European country.
It was interesting. I mean, my mentality was I'm going out here to start my basketball career professionally. So I understood that I wasn't going to go to places that had people that looked like me in abundance. So that was already set. Plus, I'm an older, I'm in my mid 20s, so I understand life a bit more and I have a better understanding of how people can be. But I'm about to make my money. So at this point, there's nothing that's going to stop me. I played for a racist general manager who was blatant about it. Uh, he said some things that made me nearly want to take his head off. Um, I played in a country where I was one of probably 10 black people in the whole country where kids would come up and touch my skin. It was really, really interesting. And, you know, I would say instinctually at that juncture in my life, I had matured, but not enough to not feel it and want to react negatively to it.
Hmm.
I'm glad I didn't, but it was a struggle. It's an internal battle to make sure that you understand that sometimes ignorance isn't hate. Sometimes ignorance is just ignorance. They just don't know. And it's a tough thing to put it on the person that's being oppressed to figure it out. But that was the situation I was in. So I had to really navigate that and understand, okay, what person was ignorant due to hate and what person was ignorant due to being ignorant. And that was a constant day-to-day battle. And then once you kind of settle into a country or a city and they know that you're a part of their system, you're going to the grocery stores, you're going to the restaurants, you live in their condos. Like it's one of those things where they get more comfortable and you have those discussions. There's big language barriers, but the broken English and you trying to figure out a few words of the country that you live in to try and communicate, you start to see more smiles, you start to see more waves. There's the demeanor and the posturing starts to lessen. And you find out ultimately that people are people. We're all trying to strive for the same things in life. It's just sometimes we get clouded by things that really don't matter. And living overseas and playing in Eastern European countries was a huge, huge benefit for me. It really accelerated my ability to be more tolerant. It really helped me understand that I can't approach every situation the same way just because it looks the same. You really got to take your time to understand and figure people out and then, deal with them accordingly. And sometimes it has to be harsh, and sometimes, most of the time, it doesn't have to be harsh. And, and I also played in South America, and that was a great experience as well. So I just chalk up all my experiences playing overseas and traveling the world as just great opportunities to, number one, see the world, to, number one, be engaged in communities I would have never been engaged in, and number three, I got to play the sport I love while seeing the world. So, the things that were negative that happened during that time playing overseas, they are far, far less than all of the amazing positive things that I experienced during that time.
Yeah, I think that's a great message to give to the athletes is um, learning how to process difficult situations or negative situations that may happen to you, and it's like you mentioned, it's not always because they're trying to be that way. It's because they don't know, or they haven't been taught, whatever it may be, right? And it may be a language thing, it may be a color, or because they look different than you. And I think that's a great way to inform the players. Say, don't try not to react in a negative way, right? How, think about where you are, the situation you're in, and process that, and learn and be positive, make a positive out of a negative situation. And it sounds like that's what you've been able to do.
Yeah, and it's not easy. I'm not going to sit here and act like I got it all right every time. I had some moments where, anger got the best of me. And I regret those moments. I grew from those moments and I figured out how to be better moving forward. So it's not about batting 1,000 here. It's about understanding that you're in a process. You're growing, you're developing, you're learning, you're understanding more, both
Yeah.
about other people and about yourself. And you have to give yourself that leeway. I was in a country that I played in, and a coach from America came to coach our team, and we're at a dinner. First night he's there, and he says, "Okay, guys, I want to tell you a joke because everybody could speak English on my team." And he's like, "Do you know what Black people in Canada are for?" And once he said that, I just kind of got quiet and just kind of was very, because I was beside him and I was looking away from him because I didn't like where this was going from the jump.
Hmm.
And he said, "They're there because they're made of pucks." And I got up, and my first intention was to grab him by the throat.
Hmm.
But I got up and I left the table. I got in my car, I went to my condo, and I started packing my stuff.
Hmm.
And the assistant to the general manager came. She called me. She came to my condo and she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm leaving." She said, "Why?" I told her why. She said she pleaded with me. She said she was sorry. I said to her, basically, you have two options. Either he leaves or I'm leaving. Let me know in an hour. And I continued to pack.
Hmm.
And I got a call about 45 minutes later saying they bought a plane ticket for him and sent him home.
Wow.
So, in a moment like that, where it could have gotten really ugly in that restaurant, and I would have had, quote unquote, every right to do it
Hmm.
from a very, very, very visceral perspective. But in the big picture, standing my ground and being willing to lose money over this, because if I leave this team, there's no money left for me. I got to find work elsewhere.
Yeah.
But it was so offensive, and I knew that I couldn't play for a man that felt that was okay to say, and I couldn't be in a system that was tolerant of that. That I was willing to lose all of that and get on a plane the next day, pay my own way to go home. Don't even have them pay. Just get on a plane the next day and leave.
Yeah.
And because I took that stance, they understood how serious I was
Hmm.
and the magnitude of what was transpiring. And I feel like they made the right decision. So you're going to be challenged, and usually when you're challenged, you're going to have to be willing to lose and risk some things in order to stand up for what you believe in. And that was a moment that I felt like basketball, the money, the whatever I was getting from playing in that country, it wasn't worth being coached by somebody who felt like it was okay to do that. So
Yeah.
it ended up working out the way it ended up.
Yeah. I think that's really a testament to you and your personality and your demeanor that you manage yourself in a way that they could have been sending you home in an hour based
Or
on
to the police station, right?
right, yeah, or worse, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's yeah, that again. That's a testament to you. And as you move on in your career, and you move into broadcasting, did you ever feel that you were being overlooked or maybe not getting that job um, because of who you are? Um, did that come up? I don't know if obviously I don't know if it did, but did you ever feel that way that it was a difficult situation um, because of who you are?
I don't know if I felt it was because of who I was. I felt that, in the broadcasting world, especially basketball in our country, it's really a small group.
Hmm.
And as you know, it's not something that people walk away from, right? And the people that are there are friends of people who are making decisions, and they do what they do, and they've been doing it for years. So I never felt like because of who I was that I wasn't able to do certain things, but I felt it was relationship based. I felt that there are people that had deeper roots in the business that were able to utilize those roots and maintain position. So And maybe part of that is involved in it. Who knows? But I do remember being told that I was the right shade of black to be in broadcasting, which was very eye opening to me.
Mm,
Uh, it was very disrespectful, and it let me into a bit of a window of what the thought process was behind when they looked at minorities at the time to be involved in broadcasting. There might have been, because this is one person speaking. I can't say that they speak for everybody behind the scenes,
right.
but maybe it was a part of it. But I found that to be absolutely and utterly ridiculous and disrespectful. And at that point, again, when I'm faced with those situations, my decision was, well, I'm going to show you that I'm going to make this long term. This is going to be a career. It's not going to be something I got because I'm a former Olympian and played for our national team and played. No, we're going to do this because I'm going to improve and be as good as I can be as a broadcaster, just like I did with basketball. I'm going to improve my game to get as high as I can in terms of the level I play at. I'm going to do the same thing with broadcasting. And at some point, you're going to have to turn to me and say, well, you can do it, but we just don't have space for you. You're not going to say I didn't work hard enough and I'm not good enough. That's never going to come out of your mouth. So,
Mhm.
it's any business that I feel that we're in, we have to understand that there's going to be some level of resistance. Some of it may be legit, a lot of it may not be legit, but it's how we decide to navigate it. And it's one of those things where it doesn't matter how high up the chain you go, you're going to face it at some point.
Yeah.
And what I like now is that now we have a platform to be able to voice the things that 15 years ago, 20 years ago, when I got into the business, it wasn't cool to say because they could X you out of the scene very quickly. Now there's a platform, as you mentioned, social media. There are so many ways of getting your message out
Mhm.
that the covert racism and the covert ways of holding people back have been exposed. And now, when anything resembles it, it's easily identifiable and it can be put out there for everybody to see. So, it's going to be an interesting shift over the next, I'd say, 5 to 10 years in terms of how we see minorities moving in different business circles, and understanding opportunities that they get. And then there's going to be a transfer where we're going to see minorities who are in decision making positions, and that's going to be a real eye opener to see how that trickles down in terms of how companies are run, like media broadcasting teams are positioned and composed and things of that nature. So it's going to be a very interesting time over the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. I totally agree. And if you think about, obviously an organization that you know very well in the Raptors and how they've been a champion in that area. And if you think back to 2019 and with everything that happened with Masai and Golden State, and if I truly do believe if that was a white man that said, no, I'm the president of this organization, you shouldn't be treating me this way, we wouldn't have the same situation that happened. And
Yeah, you're right.
and
You're so right.
yeah, but Masai is still very much a minority when it comes to um, being a black man in a very significant role within an organization. Um, and that's it's been highlighted a lot, and um, like you said, that we hope that changes um, very soon, and people have that equal opportunity. And
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. And, I thought Masai handled it very well.
Mhm.
We saw on the tape how, as a man, you don't allow another person to put their hands on you, whether they have a gun on their hip or not. And Masai didn't, fight back, but he stood his ground
Yeah.
and let the officer know. And, one thing that was clear about that whole transaction was that Masai did nothing wrong. And the message I kept getting from that whole scenario was, in a different time, without a camera, that situation is flipped on its head, and Masai has no chance.
Yeah.
No matter what his resources are, no matter what his financial ability is, without the cameras there, he has no chance. And to fast forward it to 2019, where cameras are there and Masai has resources and he has a position, has the connections, and to see how that situation was handled, and they still tried to flip it. The officer still tried to sue Masai,
Mm-hmm.
and Masai, when he won, didn't go after the officer. It was a significant piece of the puzzle that Masai wanted to send a message about. He wanted people to understand that he was wronged. He knew he was wrong, but it's not about being vindictive. It's not about revenge. It's about getting the message out there that these things won't be tolerated
Yeah.
and we will stand up for them. And I thought that was a very important piece because a lot of times our first instinct naturally is to go to revenge. You hurt me, I'm going to hurt you.
Yeah.
And what does that do? It just perpetuates negativity. It perpetuates hurt, violence, death, all of those negative things. And Masai did a great job of really sending a message of that's not the path I choose to take.
Mm-hmm.
And this is how I'm going to prove it to you.
Yeah. No, I agree 100% on that. Um, Maybe switching a little bit and talking about um, the Harris Brand and the Harris Brand Foundation. As you know, Waterloo United and the Harris Brand are new partners, and we're really happy to and really excited to be partnering with Brian and his team. Um, Maybe you could talk about how you got involved there and what your role is and maybe what it will be in the future, working with that organization.
Yeah, well, I've known Brian since he was in high school. He's younger than me, so Brian was always that young guy who talked some smack, played basketball, played soccer, but would always be on the court and be going at people. And for whatever reason, him and I not kicked it off as kids, and just kind of were cool. And we've just stayed in contact. Brian has constantly reached out to me over the years. He's always thinking progressively. He's got that hustle mentality. He's always trying to build something, and I really admired that about him. And throughout the years, we've just kind of stayed in contact. Even when his son was going through the process of going to school in the States, he'd call me because he knows I experienced that, and we talk a lot about figuring out ways to navigate that. So he's very good at sourcing information, and that's another thing I respect about him. And we just developed a friendship over the years, and he built this foundation, Harris Brand Foundation, and he's done a great job of slowly building it, not trying to skip any steps, and making sure that it's got a great base. It's the involvement of the people that are in the foundation are solid, and they're connected, and they're good people. And the idea that Brian has always had is helping these youth, helping minority kids, helping these children get to the levels that they need to get to, that sometimes parents don't know how to navigate. And it's beyond the field of play, right? It's beyond the soccer field. It's beyond the basketball court. It's beyond the track. It's the classroom. It's the socialization. It's understanding how to navigate the different challenges that you will have as an athlete, especially when you get out of your comfort zone and say, leave the country.
Mm-hmm.
So, and those are the things that I feel, as we get kids going to the States on scholarship, we don't round them out enough to give them the opportunity to really understand before they get there that these are some of the pitfalls that might happen. And he's been focused on that. And that really attached to me. I went to the States without any understanding of what I was going to encounter. And I was able to navigate it, but we've heard many stories of kids that have gone there 1 or 2 years, they're back in Canada because they just weren't prepared. So I really, really admire the stance of the Harris Brand Foundation and where they go in terms of helping these kids. And when he approached me to be a part of the board, it was one of those things where I've always helped Brian in terms of anything he's needed from me. He just knows he has to call me, and we can sit down and talk, and whatever I can work out for him, I'm willing to do. But when he asked me to be on board, it was one of those things where, putting my name behind it understanding that there's a platform that I have that may be able to help this foundation and build Brian and what he's trying to do and help kind of spread his vision out to more people, I was all for it. And he's been great, and we've had a great partnership, and I'm looking forward to doing things like these in terms of speaking to different organizations and telling my story and really just trying to get young people to understand that the potential is unlimited and the boundaries are only set by them. And I think that it's such an important part. And Brian and the foundation does a great job of building the other parts of helping these kids be successful on whatever platform they end up on. So it's really a mutual situation that there's a belief system in place that we've both kind of had since we've known each other for 25 plus years. So, and Brian, as you know, he's a great guy, great human being. He'll give you the shirt off of his back, and he's just one of the good ones. And I'm always there for people that are good people.
Yeah, um, I I totally agree. When Brian and I first started talking and discussing a possible partnership, it was very easy for me to see that our two organizations were a great fit in terms of our values, our motivation, our our belief that we need to help the athletes on and off the playing field, or the playing surface, and that was really important to us as an organization, is provide athletes with as much of, we can talk about the technical side of sport all day long, and practice sessions, and all that kind of stuff, but we know that all of the 100% of these players will be in our communities
Mm.
as adults, as working people, as contributing members of society. So we need to teach them life skills, and
Hmm.
whether that be and we use sport for that, right? So the socialization, teamwork, how to deal with difficulties, and how to um, how to challenge yourself, and those sort of things. And that's where Brian fit in for us, is the side that we're not trained to do, and and we don't have the resources as a nonprofit organization. We just didn't have the resources when it came to um, mentorship, and mentorship, not talking about the soccer side, but off the field, and
Hmm.
tutoring, SAT training, and those sort of things. And it, after a couple of conversations, I knew it was an organization that we needed to be involved with in some capacity. And but yeah, like I said, we're really excited about the potential of um, of what we can do together, and how we can help athletes, and that's really what it's all about.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing too, right? It's,
Mhm.
as you said, when you connect with somebody who really fits your line of thinking and your overall plan, it's a special kind of connection. You know what I mean? And I'm glad that you got introduced to Brian, because he's one of those guys who you'll find that for years to come, even if the organizations don't work together, there's going to be a synergy there of
Mhm.
mutually helpful, respectful, willing to lend a hand here or there, because that's the way he's built, and that's the way I've known him to be for over 25 years. So he's done a great job with the Harris Brand Foundation, and I just feel that your organization and the Harris Brand Foundation are just going to do some great things in the future. And we agree, it's all about helping the kids, and
Mhm.
once that's the main focus, then we're all going to do the right thing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Just to finish off, I was wondering if maybe you could, send a message, or kind of a final thought to the athletes, and how to overcome some difficulties, and like you've said, in the past hour here. So just wanted to kind of give you a minute for that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've all heard the saying, attitude is 10% what happens to you, 90% what you do with it. And understand that at every juncture in your life, both on and off the field of play, you have decisions to make. You have to understand that you're in control. And I have a saying that goes, you control the controllables, or the uncontrollable will control you. So when you have the opportunity to take control of yourself in a situation, you do it, because there will be times you won't have control and you're going to have a tougher time navigating that. But understand that everything is attainable if you're willing to work, if you believe, if you listen, and you have an understanding that everything is building towards success. It's not about the result, it's about the process. Continue to work hard, continue to believe, and you're going to see that everything is transferable in everything you do for the rest of your life. The building blocks start now, so build a solid foundation.
That's a perfect message to end. And again, I want to thank you very much for sharing your experiences, your knowledge, your thoughts, and your words of encouragement for not just Waterloo United athletes, but all athletes who watch this video. Really been a pleasure speaking with you and learning from you, and wish you nothing but great success in what you do. And I'm sure we'll be connecting again soon with our two organizations working together now. But yeah, just really want to say thank you, um, and take care, and hopefully we'll speak soon.
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you. And I'm really looking forward to the amazing things that both of our organizations are going to do moving forward. Thank you very much.